What's up, everybody? Rugby Illuminati here again. Just thought I would talk about this issue that I think is particularly interesting to me. On the train back from Paris, I was sitting with my brother and he was showing me this article that Brian Moore wrote called "Bloodied, Bruised but Not Broken, Steve Borthwick Must Stick with Marcus Smith." Now, for those of you that don't know Brian Moore, I'm sure many of you do who are long-time rugby fans. Brian Moore is a former England hooker. He used to do the commentary for Six Nations, which I loved. I think he got a lot of criticism for being grumpy and just saying, things in quite a grumpy way for things that were genuine infringements that I always enjoyed.
So England in possession. They haven't had much of this ball
and
at
they
all.
kicked it away again.
Toby Flood
God's sake!
And I think he always had a good point, right? In scrums, he always thought the put-in wasn't straight, and he always called it out. And it's still a bit of a farce and a bit of a joke. And yeah, it's a shame for me to see him kind of being taken away more and more from commentary and have his voice kind of muffled a little bit in terms of his analysis. I always thought it was good, even though maybe his approach maybe rubbed people the wrong way. He was quite direct with how he said things, but I think the interesting thing in this article, and it's behind a paywall, and it's only a little bit of an article that I want to talk about, is that he talks about the fact that England took the points that were on offer in their game against Fiji, and that ultimately won them the game. Now, I was pretty sure I wanted to release this video after England were knocked out of the World Cup because I didn't want anybody to think I was trying to gloat or be a classic arrogant Englishman, but I think there's something really to be said here, and there's a real difference between just normal test rugby and knockout stage rugby. I think it gets lost in the weeds a little bit before we get into knockout rugby, that there has to be a different approach. And I think it's a lot of the reason why England did well enough to get into a semi-final and why they competed like they did. Obviously, they had a bit of an easy run into the World Cup and they had to play Fiji in a quarter-final. Compare that to Ireland and France, who had to play the two people in the final. Obviously, it's a world of difference. But they really took South Africa to the edge because they took what was on offer. They didn't kind of go for the corner. They didn't try for the aggressive play to get in the opposition's head. And I think that makes a real difference. I really wanted Ireland to go through and win with New Zealand, but I think their tactics really lost them the game in the end. I think they went for the corner too often and they didn't take the points that were on offer to them. I think there was at least 6-9 points they could have taken from penalties, and that might have been the difference to win the game. And, I understand this tactic of going for the corner. It's very popular. It's very in chic at the moment, but I think it loses perspective. And maybe there's analytics that say you go for the corner, blah, 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 blah. But I'm sorry, but there's no analytics in my head that justify leaving 3 points on the board. What you don't understand about knockout rugby is that adding points consistently to the board is so underrated. And it's obviously a bit of an old school thing to talk about, but keeping the scoreboard ticking is such an important part of the game, especially with the excellence of defences at international level. It makes a huge difference. And I think it almost lost South Africa the game against England as well. Obviously, South Africa weren't on form. They weren't their best self, and that was the reason why England were in the game. But they went for the corner multiple times before they finally decided going for the post themselves. And it was a very, very close game. Pollard came on and he started kicking for the posts, and they took the points that were on offer. Knockout rugby is different. And I think it explains a lot why we see New Zealand and South Africa advancing rather than Ireland and France. Now, I don't want to compare England and Ireland and France. They, as I've said, and I really want to reiterate this isn't what England did in terms of better than France and Ireland. The reality is England had a much easier path. France and Ireland had to play the two people in the final now. However, if we look at the France and Ireland game, Ireland kept going for the corner and they didn't go for the points. And it just felt like they were trying to use the same tactics they used against South Africa in the group stages, where they had the safety net of more games to make up for it. And they were trying to use that tactics in something that was like do or die. And on top of that, I also don't think that's a good tactic to use against New Zealand. I don't think you can get under New Zealand's skin. I think the only way to really beat New Zealand is beating them at their own game. That's why I think if England did go through to the final, they would have been screwed, right? They played South Africa at their own game because it's a very English style and it's a Steve Borthwick style. If they were forced to play open rugby, I think they would have been torn apart by New Zealand. So Ireland did the same tactics against the All Blacks they did against South Africa, and they kept going for the corner. And ultimately, they ended up losing the game because they left the points on the board. I mean, it came down to a mad play to try and get a try on the last blow, and they started to look really tired, and it was epic, and they just missed out. But if they took the points on the board, they probably would have won the game. The other part of being in a knockout stage of a tournament as well that's different is that you have to play lights out clinically. You have to make as little mistakes as possible, and France didn't do that. They had the most powerful attack I think I've seen in the entire World Cup so far. Like the best attack so far out of anybody in the World Cup. And it was so good it made South Africa's defence look like just another international team's defence. They were making holes, they were making breaks, the maul was great, they were getting over the gain line consistently. They just made South Africa not look like South Africa. But they lacked the clinical aspect of their game. They made mistakes constantly, and when you're up against an opposition that knows it's do or die, they're going to do everything in their power to scrape past and get back in the lead. And yeah, I just think there are two things that people forget about with knockout rugby. It is clinical, and it is also about keeping the scoreboard ticking over. And to be fair, I think this is the same in all sports. It's sometimes why knockout competitions become, the games themselves sometimes are a little bit boring. Sometimes we get spectacles of games, and I'm thinking of France, South Africa. I'm thinking of Ireland, New Zealand. But sometimes we get games that are objectively boring, and both teams are just trying to not make mistakes. And I think maybe you can criticise England, South Africa of that. But I've seen many, I'm a casual football fan, but many Champions Leagues finals that were kind of boring games because people were trying to not make mistakes. But I think there's a real thing to say about knockout sports, that it's a lot different. And I just feel like the teams that are now out of the tournament didn't have that in mind with their tactics, if that makes sense. It's another reason why I think Gareth Southgate did well with England in the Euros many years ago, is that he got criticised for playing a boring game of rugby, but it's about, boring game of football, but it's all about not having goals scored against you. And that was his tactic, and look how far they went. I don't know, I hope that the Ireland and the French coaching staffs kind of learn from that specifically. Fijian, also Argentinian as well. I mean, Argentinians could have really done with that. I mean, the defence looked great, but then it all kind of fell apart, right? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm really what else I'm trying to say with this, but really, I just think it's an interesting thing to make note that clinicality and taking the points on the board, stuff that's considered kind of boring old rugby, is really important at this stage in the tournament. And I'll be fascinated to see how this plays into the World Cup final. I'm going to do a preview show later in the week, hopefully, so I'll get more into that later on. But that's it for me, just a quick video on this topic.